Sister Day and then Pat.
So I understand the fact that, like, yeah, like I've come across some young folk and they just, come out and they say things. But I have to say this, I've had it with my own sons, you know what I mean? Young and everything like that, and how they come across. But then there's sometimes as they're doing it, there's some truth to what they say, because
Mm-hmm.
he's coming in on this and he's like, he actually corrects the friends, like, what are you sitting there, you know what I mean, you know this punishment of sin, you know what I'm saying, or you know uh or correcting a concept that is, if God is anger and he's taken this on you, that is probably could be done as a fact of like loving discipline and instruction, and then Elihu does address, I don't know if you guys could, but in the sense of, God's sovereignty and,
Right.
to restore things and the humbleness to reconcile people. So it's like, I don't think if Satan's using him, I think on some of these topics, I don't know, Satan would himself. I'm just saying that, yes, because sometimes when in your youthfulness, when you first come to the Lord and you're reading the word and you come across something and just like, everybody needs to listen to me, just hear me out.
Right.
But not necessarily that they might not speaking really off, but as you say, that we have the feeling is, if like, yeah, I have the answer, I'm going forth and everything, and God corrects those things. But I think there's a middle ground. There's a sense of a middle ground when it comes to this. We are not there, right? We're not hearing the tone, but in some things he did lay in wait, but I'm not gonna say that, Saint was using him to just stir up the pot. I think there's something that he needs to learn about himself. But there are some things that he does speak that, like, like I've had enough of these friends chewing at him. You know what I'm saying? The way that they're chewing.
Exactly. Brother Pat, your thoughts?
Well, I just want to point out that it's a real advantage to speak last, man, because if you guys have never been in some sort of like family quarrel or some sort of argument that involves multiple people, the great thing about speaking last is you come off of as wise no matter what, because all the mistakes of the earlier people are already exposed before you even begin to speak. And so if you get to speak last, you just come off great. And this is just in life. This is just basic life advice. If you're in a family argument, just hold your tongue, wait till the end, and you'll be in a pretty good position. And so I think this guy also is in that position.
Right. He is, and that's a very good perspective, brother, because that is a very true statement even in real life. Like generally speaking, the last person who speaks is generally the first one who's remembered. And it is so true what you're saying there. And the other advantage is that when you're last, especially if you've heard everyone else, then you have the best position to introduce a fresh way of looking at things. Now, if you're Elihu, you've heard these three other men make all their cases, as he acknowledged, none of them had anything that they could say that he saw convincing Job of anything. So he is automatically put in a situation where he can rule out the framework or the arguments those guys made. And so he's probably sitting back thinking, I need to come up with something different. Again, we don't know, but this is how it feels. This is how it feels to me anyway. And so here in verses 1-4 that I just read, that, I'll read it again. Furthermore, Elihu answered and said, hear my words, O ye wise men, and give ear to me, that you may have knowledge, or you that have knowledge. For the ear tries the words as the mouth tastes meat. Let us choose to us judgment. Let us know among ourselves what is good. So he's asking all of them, Job and his friends, to take careful consideration of what he's about to say. And he says that just as the mouth tastes food to judge it, in other words, when you taste food, is it good? Is it right? Is this how it's supposed to taste? He says, so it is with the ear that tests words, should be, being able to discern the truth. So what he's saying is that basically this is what he's saying. I'm going to give you food for your ears. You determine if it's true or not. You discern the truth of what I'm about to tell you. And so the matter that's here under discussion in his mind is very serious, and it is. And he's telling them that what I'm about to tell you needs to be examined thoughtfully and not just accepted blindly. So at least he's saying, listen, don't just take my word for it. Hear what I have to say. Listen to what I have to say, and let's go from there. And you can discern. All right. So he invites them to discern with correct and proper discernment. And he's asking them to let's all agree on what is true, what is right, what is good. And let's show that the truth can endure a discerning examination. And so this is where I think he's going. Meg, you have something you want to say?
No, I think that Elihu's shifting to them because he addresses, O ye wise men, and give ear unto me and hear this. But he's also, I feel like he's coming in as like reasoning. I don't think that he's like accusing anybody, right? I feel like he's about to start reasoning. And when we start reading this, I think that he's reasoning and he's like, hey, let's discern what is good. Let's reason this out. He's not, I don't think that he's accusing anybody because like when we get to start at verse 5, we see that he's taking Job's position, showing his friends what Job was saying and what God has said about him, that Job is righteous, right?
But did I say he was accusing anything?
No.
Okay. All right. I thought maybe I slipped. All right.
No,
But
no,
yeah, okay.
I'm just saying like what's being introduced as
Right.
I'm seeing it.
Right. I think that what you're saying is exactly what he says in these first 4 verses. So you're right. I agree with you 100%. You know, and I do believe he's talking to the 3 friends as well as Job. I mean, Job is the one he said, I'm going to teach you wisdom. That's what he said. So in verse 5 through 9, he says, for Job has said, I am righteous. Now he's telling Job says, I am righteous. So let me ask you a question now, Sister Meg. Was Job righteous or was he not righteous?
Job was righteous.
He was. So what Elihu is saying right now, how do you think he's presenting that statement? That Job has said, I am righteous.
I think that he's speaking into them. So he's saying, for Job has said, I am righteous, and God has taken away my judgment. But see, I think that he identifies that. And not only is he identifying that about what Job said, now we're coming to an understanding of what God said about him in the very beginning, that he was righteous. You know, so I think that he's seeing these things. Because I agree, Job was righteous.
So you think that Elihu is saying something here when he says that Job said, I am righteous, that you don't think this is an accusation, but that this is being a correct assessment of what is true about Job?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Look, we'll see about that. So he says, for Job has said, I am righteous, and that God has taken away my judgment. Should I lie against my right? My wound is incurable without transgression. What man is like Job, who drinks up scorning like water, which goes in company with the workers of iniquity and walks with wicked men? For he has said, it profits a man nothing that he should delight himself with God. So what he is saying now, he's simply restating what he believes Job's position is and what he believes Job's position to be. All right. That he claimed righteousness and that he felt wronged by God. See, I see this as an accusation. I don't see this as a confirmation that is siding with Job. To me, he's saying very clearly that you are saying, Job, that you are righteous, and that you felt wronged by God. So I see him making an accusation. And so, and I'm open to hear something different. I really am. Sister Sean, what do you say? What do you think?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, he does not think that Job is innocent.
No, he doesn't.
Because if you go back to 32, he said that he was his wrath was kindled against Job because he was trying to justify his innocence.
Mhm.
So he doesn't think that Job is innocent. He's just bringing in a different formula than the other friends are.
Right. See what Elihu is saying about Job. Elihu is raising a concern that's this way. He's telling his position on Job is this: you say you're righteous, Job. You say you're righteous, and that you, in spite of your righteousness, have been wronged by God, implying that there is something that God is not seeing about your righteousness. And so the concern that he's raising is that such words that he sees Job as conveying is that serving God has brought him no benefit. That's so to me, this is an accusation. And it's a wrong accusation against Job. Job actually is righteous. But I will say this, there is a point where Job did intimate that he wonders what is God doing or why he's not reacting, and that in some places that God may even be cruel. So I give Elihu a pass in this regard, that he is partially right and partially wrong. But this is seen as is sort of like, it's dangerous speech because it can lead others to question the value of obedience. So the issue here is not only Job's suffering, but the implications of his words about God's justice. And so again, I think that with Elihu, he is speaking in a very masterful way. And I think that the masterful way he's speaking is even is shown even in how all of us are responding to him, because it's really strange, because the impact or the way he was speaking, we can see that it can have us all over the place, but all of us were in unison in how we looked at the first three. This guy's different. He's different. He's special. He's special. Verse 10, Job 34, verse 10. Elihu goes on and he says, therefore, here he goes again, hearken unto me, you men of understanding. Hearken to me. And he says, far be it from God that he should do wickedness. See, because he's saying this because he is making the argument that God has been dealing with Job in a wicked way. So he says, therefore, hearken to me, you men of understanding. And he uses this, understand, like he calls them earlier wise. He calls them men of, what did he say? It was wise. I forget the other one, but now he calls them, men of understanding. He's elevating himself above them. He's like, oh yeah, you guys are smart. You guys are smart dudes, but I got some things that I can help you with. You guys are smart. You guys are wise, but you need just still another level that you need to get to. And I'm going to get you there. And he says, far be it from God that he should do wickedness, and from the Almighty that he should commit iniquity. All true. Far be it from God from any of us to believe that God will commit iniquity or wickedness. And then he says, for the work of a man shall he render unto him, and cause every man to find according to his ways. Yea, surely God will not do wickedly, neither will the Almighty pervert judgment. He's 100% correct here. Doctrinally sound. And so the central principle here is being declared that God is perfectly just. This is what Elihu was saying, and he is 100% correct. And he says that wickedness is not sourced with God. He says it's not sourced with God. It can't come from him. But notice something else about this. It was God who gave Satan permission to go down this path. It was him that gave Satan permission. And God renders to each person according to their ways. He basically is saying here that what a man sows, that's what he will reap. And that God's judgments are always right. And again, he's correct. Elihu is correct. He's correct here. And so this shows the foundation of the principal argument that whatever God does, whatever it may be, it is always just, even if man does not understand it. Anybody have a comment? Anybody?
I do.
Go for it, sister.
Well, I was just saying, I put it in the chat down there. This reminds me sort of how Philip Anthony Mitchell. He comes on the scene. He's a new pastor, very charismatic. He speaks a lot of truth, gives credit to the Lord for everything he does. But then all of a sudden, he's teaching false things. He's teaching, that you can lose salvation, that you can all these different doctrines. By this time, he's got all these people listening to him in the way that he speaks.
Right.
And Elihu's, I'm not saying Elihu's hollering like he does. I'm saying he's speaking in a way where he gets everyone to hear him because he sounds as though he's speaking truth. But what do the wolves among us do?
That's how they sound.
They're disguised. They want us to listen to them. They got the knowledge. We need to listen to them because they know. And they will say truth. But then, and I love this story. It came to me too. Think about this story. We've got all the types of people that the Lord describes in the New Testament. We've got wheat. We've got wheat like Job. We've got tares like the three friends. And now we've introduced a wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, this is amazing, this story. It's like, I think this is what we're supposed to be learning here.
Right.
Like, to take what these people say and really, I just think it's amazing. Anyway,
you have to do that, and this is one thing that I encourage because you can like you mentioned Philip Anthony Mitchell. People are very divided on him, and he got me. To be honest, he got me in the very beginning. I was like, wow, we need some men preaching like this. But after careful listening to him over and over again, he started saying things like when he started talking about that angels advocate for men before God, I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then the tongues, you got to be kidding me. And then he's saying he's a prophet called by God directly. You got to be kidding me. And it's like he goes on. And so I've seen so many things since then that I just, I'm just like, and you're right. And that he does, this is how I see him is how I see this guy. Like you're reluctant to want to say he's a bad guy. You're reluctant. You want to root for him. And then they keep showing you all the reasons why you shouldn't, but every man has his day, and you have to figure out for yourselves what, in this case, what the scripture is teaching us. You really do. So in verse 13, he goes on and he says, who has given him a charge over the earth, or who has despised the whole world? If he has set his heart upon man, if he gather unto himself his spirit and his breath, all flesh will perish together, and man shall turn again to the dust. So he is pointing out that God's sovereignty is shown by the authority that he has over his creation. And this is true. And he says that no one made God. No one appoints God ruler. He's pointing out that God is a sovereign ruler, sovereign king over all his creation, and he does so and exercises his rights over his own creation. And he does this. And see, he's saying true things here. And I love this thing. I love this part about how he talks about If he set his heart upon man, if he gathers unto himself his spirit and his breath, all flesh shall perish together. And you get this idea that he's trying to tell, that Elihu is trying to tell us, which is that God doesn't rely on man for his existence. You know, just because you close your eyes, you can't say that God is not there. You know, and he's pointing out all life depends on God. And if he were to withdraw his sustaining mercy, his sustaining power, if he were to withdraw the command, his command that holds all things together, the whole world would immediately perish. Again, he's saying nothing but truth here. Solid truth, solid biblical truth. And so this shows that man is entirely dependent on God. And this is what he's pointing out. All men are all entirely dependent on God. I didn't say he was accusing anything. I'm telling you, what he's saying is true, Meg.
No, I'm saying, no, and that's what I'm saying. I said, what's good about this though, is he is saying all these wonderful things.
Yeah,
and these things are true, and
right.
He's not accusing anybody.
Right. He's saying these things. He's stating truth, but then so did three friends. They also said a lot of truth. A lot of truth.
But they also accused Job falsely.
Yeah, they did.
And I don't think Elihu is.
Okay, that's fine.
I think he's kind of like counseling, you know?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I'm not arguing with it. I mean, it's open for discussion. That's what we're doing. So it's good. So, you know, again, he's showing that man is totally dependent upon God in every aspect of his being and his existence. And so we are not in a position ever to accuse God of wrongdoing. But see, to go back to what you're saying, Meg, this is the case that he is making to Job. He's telling Job that he is misunderstanding God. He's making his argument, not to us, so to speak, even though it is, but he's making his case directly about Job. He is saying to Job, this is the mistake you're making. This is the mistake you're making, Job. That God, that somehow that God's existence depends upon, depends upon you or your righteousness. You think he's cruel or whatever, in other words, like God lives for you. This is what, if you look at what he says in this verse, this is what he's talking about. He's telling Job, who has given him a charge over the earth. He's speaking to Job as though he is doing this, as though he's acting like someone who has that ability to come at God this way. That's all I'm saying. Just throwing it out there. Because if you read it, he's saying these things for a reason. It's not just to give a general understanding about God. He's speaking directly to Job. And he's telling him, this is how you are seeing God. And your vision, your perspective of God is wrong, even though the truth that even though what he's saying about God is absolutely true about God.
I think he's speaking to all of them.
That's not the issue. He's talking to Job. He's told the other ones that they didn't have it right with Job. He is telling Job, and the other ones, I have the answer for Job. And that's what he's
I thought in verse 2, he said, hear my words, O ye wise men, and give ear unto me. I thought that's who he was addressing. Sorry. I didn't know it was just Job.
Okay. All right. So anyway, he wants to make it clear to Job and to all of them and to all of us that this is the wrong way of looking at God. So whether we include Job in that conversation or exclude him, it's the truth. And whether he's talking to Job or all of them, it's still the truth. But the issue is, what is he really addressing? He's not just throwing us out there for some random reason. He started talking to do what? To convince Job of something. That's the whole reason why he's having this conversation. Right? So verse 16. If now you have understanding, hear this. And again, look what he says. If now you have understanding. All right? If. Then hear this. Hearken to the voice. Look what he says. Hearken to the voice of my words. if you have understanding, shall even he that hates right govern, shall even he that hates right govern? And will you condemn him that is most just? Who is he talking about? Will you condemn him that is most just? Shall you condemn God? The answer is no. Is it fit to say to a king, you are wicked? Who is he talking to? What is the point of him saying this? He's talking to Job. That's the only reason he's talking. He says, and will you condemn him that is most just? Is it fit to say to a king, you are wicked? In other words, if you wouldn't speak to a king this way, what makes you think you should speak to God this way? And to the princes, will you say to them that you are ungodly? How much less him that accepts not the person of princes, nor regards the rich more than the poor? For they are all the work of God's hands. In a moment they shall die, and the people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away, and the mighty shall be taken away without hand. So he's arguing that if it is wrong to accuse earthly rulers unjustly, it is far more wrong to accuse God. So what is Elihu accusing Job of? Meg.
What is Elihu accusing Job of?
Yeah. What do you see?
Like when I hear him say, because my perception is that he's talking to everybody. So when he's saying,
all right,
and hold on, I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
It says, is it fit to say to a king, thou art wicked, and to princes, ye are ungodly? Mm-hmm. Well, Job's friends accused Job of being wicked. Job's friends made cases.
Meg. Job is not a king. Job was never. Job was never. No, you don't, because if you did, you would look at what it's saying in the text. Look at what it's saying in the text, 16 through 20. If you have understanding, hearken to the voice of my words. Shall him that hates right govern? And will you condemn him that is most just? He's not talking about. This is not talking about. Elihu is not talking about his friends. Is that what you think?
No, I'm saying Elihu, I feel like Elihu's speaking to, I mean, they're all there.
I get it. But why are they all here? They are all there to, quote unquote, straighten Job out, right?
Yeah. And I think that Elihu is showing, like, is it say to fit to a king, thou art wicked, and to princes you're ungodly? I feel like he's saying, like, he treats all alike. He's not playing favorites with anybody here. All
right. So he goes on, and he says, "They are all the work of his hands. In a moment they shall die, and at midnight the people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away, and the mighty shall be taken away without hand." And so, as you said, sister, God, he's pointing out that God is not, like you said, not a respecter of persons, and I agree with that 100%. He's saying truth about this. But we have to examine the reason why he's saying this. This is not just some arbitrary statements he's making. These aren't just arbitrary. And his issue, as we started from the very beginning, was clearly to address Job, because he didn't feel that Job's friends did the job. That's all I'm saying. And so he is pointing out that God removes the mighty just as easily as he removes the weak, showing that his authority is absolute. And that's what he's pointing out. And then he says, death comes suddenly upon all, proving that no one is beyond God's power. And so I can't think of any reason why he would be saying that to Job, if he didn't believe to some degree that Job has a faulty understanding, or at least a faulty response about in his assessment of God. And this is all I'm saying. And I do agree with you, sister, that this is something that is applicable into the understanding to all people. Job, his friends, his neighbors, his clientele, his previous business associate, all these things. In verse 21, he says, talking about God, for his eyes are upon the ways of man, and he sees all of his goings. There is no darkness, nor shadow of death, where the workers of iniquity may hide themselves. For he will not lay upon man more than right, that he should enter into judgment with God. He shall break in pieces mighty men without number and set others in their place. Therefore, he knows their works, and he overturns them in the night so that they are destroyed. And so he points out that God's knowledge is perfect. And he puts a strong emphasis on this, and that nothing is hidden from God. He's speaking about the sovereignty of God, and he's pointing out to Job, and he evidently, clearly, Job, along with the other ones, he wants to make them all clear that this is the way God is to be understood. So we can say that. But what I'm trying to point out here is that there is an emphasis, especially if for no other reason, we understand that this book is about Job. And so this is what Elihu is dealing with. God's judgments are measured. They are just. He doesn't give you more or put more on you than you can handle. And he does not punish what is beyond what is right. And that's why that's what he said when he was saying that God is always just and iniquity doesn't come from him. He's not the one that produces the wickedness and that brings cruelty and that all these things. And he points that out. And so he raises up and he casts down, Elihu that is, or God does, he raises up and casts down according to his own wisdom and his own judgment and discernment. He does whatsoever he wills with his creation. So this is a very strong passage for the sovereignty of God. And he points out lastly here in this passage that the fall apart of powerful people shows that God sees their works and that